McGonigal is acknowledged as one of America's top experts in leftist communist false flag tactics and spying operations, and whose expertise has led him to capture the Chinese CIA double agent spy Jerry Chun Shin Lee, who caused the deaths of at least 20 CIA undercover operatives, spurned FBI Director Christopher Wray to warn that China is using its students and professors at U.S. colleges to spy on America, and the FBI to produce its stunning film documentary, Game of Pawns, the Glenn Duffy Shriver story, that shows how American college students are recruited to spy for China and betray their own country. With the false flag narrative in full swing and attacks being a favorite target for distraction, tactics long used by radical communist socialists to achieve political goals, the FBI, as well as other state intelligence agencies, have long documented their use by former Venezuelan spy General Torres, as he aided the late President Hugo Chávez's ascent to power, but whose leadership of the Bolivarian National Intelligence Service came to a crushing halt this past March after President Maduro ordered his arrest, and was due to General Torres's treatment of believed to be Maine CIA Station Chief Joshua Halt, whom Maduro had no choice to release unless he wanted President Trump to invade Venezuela and do it by force. Yes, you heard that correctly, ladies and gentlemen. In striking back against President Maduro for buckling under to President Trump, General Torres masterminded the early August 2018 false flag drone attack that made Maduro look like a helpless baby child before all of the peoples of Venezuela, and that kept Maduro from being able to move against the training centers that Torres had established to train the American college students known as Antifa leftist radicals. Of course, not being understood by the masses of the American people about the use of false flag tactics by radical communists is that they aren't intended to hurt anyone but to provoke a response from the government that, in turn, these leftists believe will cause ordinary people and citizens to rally to them as they begin overthrowing whatever political power structure they've designed for elimination. That is why the Venezuelan mastermind of the false flag caravan pushing towards the United States border, containing tens of thousands of socialist communist supporters masquerading as refugees, thus causing President Trump to declare that he is now bringing out the military to protect his nation's borders, and that the leftist Align News Network is now screaming will cause the deaths of these illegal migrants as U.S. military forces begin gunning them down. Well, that's actually not correct at all. Like this false flag, illegal migrants and caravans making its way towards the U.S. southern border too continues explaining that the leftist bomb hoax currently unfolding in America is a long-used communist tactic of distraction. And one thing to note, folks, there are no stamps on the actual stamps of the pictures of these so-called packages. Therefore, they were never mailed. Show us one that has a stamp on the stamps saying that they were actually delivered by the U.S. Postal Service. Currently, President Trump's loyal media forces are exposing the truth that these hoaxes could have never been detonated, as well as other experts noting it would take not just an idiot, but an idiot of monumental proportions to think that he could literally mail a pipe in an envelope to Obama without the package being intercepted along the way, especially by Secret Service. Not only that, but the bombs were specifically sent to Democrats only, who, aside from Waters, are no longer in the government. They have no actual political power. Interesting. As in all false flags, events of this kind staged by leftists, the deep state-aligned mainstream propaganda media in the United States immediately began blaming President Trump and his supporters for this so-called hoax by flooding social media with the hashtag MAGA meme, and who were quickly joined by Hollywood elitists likewise blaming President Trump and his supporters for this hoax as well. That caused President Trump to plead with these media leftists to stop their hostility before someone gets hurt. You see, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, there's a lot of people that will see one thing very quickly, even though eventually they will redact their story, just like the mainstream media does, but they'll do it maybe 2 or 3 days later. But by that time, people have already seen the actual first story, and they believe every bit of it. President Trump asked the Americans to come together and send one very clear, strong, unmistakable message that acts or threats of political violence of any kind have no place in the United States, yet you choose to attack and divide anyway, correct? Important to understand as to why the leftist media rebuffed President Trump in his plea of peace is the long-known fact that communists never accommodate those they perceive are standing in their way of power. They totally and ruthlessly destroy them, such as NBC television's host Megyn Kelly, who questioned why white children trick-or-treating on Halloween couldn't wear blackface makeup portraying famous African-American heroes. When then descended upon leftist mobs demanding her apology, gave the leftist mobs the tearful apology they demanded, but that wasn't accepted. And this saw Hollywood elitists canceling her appearance on a popular television program, her Hollywood talent agency firing her as a client, and then NBC throwing her off the air completely, all of which occurred in less than 48 hours. Hopefully, if the masses of American citizens that may be ignorant about communists will awaken to the full horror of what their leftist media and Democratic Party are doing to them with these false flag hoaxes and migrant caravan attacks, this remains to be seen. But that cannot be said about America's corporate banking and financial elites, who know full well the danger their nation is facing as they watch the homeless crisis exploding in the Democratic strongholds occupying both the east and west coasts of the United States, neither of which any American company will dare enter into, as they know they'd be quickly taxed and regulated into extinction, and who, at the moment notices, can be quickly assembled into leftist mobs and unleash upon the rest of the U.S. to destroy and plunder it at will. I think as American citizens, we're going to stand up for ourselves a lot more, and the United Nations is one of the biggest issues for me in having any type of say-so in what President Trump does or puts into law into this country. You know, his executive orders and whatnot, what his decisions are. They should have no bearing on those type of things. Mickey Robinson says that the U.S. gives billions of dollars to all the countries. Why can't they take care of their own? Well, that's just it. They're corrupt. They do what they want to, and we should put policies in play if we're going to give you money. If President Trump is going to give you money, which I think I've seen a few articles where he says he's demanding these type of things, that if we give these other countries money, they're going to have to do a few things to help their own people, to help their own country. But I think it's the corruption is so rampant that obviously a lot of these people are trying to escape to have better lives for their families. For me personally, why are you having children if you can't afford them? But, you know, religions around the world tell you to have children because they don't let you do certain things. And your belief structure and your belief system says, I've got to have children, I've got to have a family before I can afford it. That's the problem. That's the uneducated and unintelligent situation that we're dealing with a lot of these human beings or migrants on our borders. Angie, you're exactly right. Becoming a U.S. citizen is a privilege, not a right. Correct. Paradox states that we need to stop finding and get out the United Nations and NATO because they're not serving their purpose anymore. Well, they're definitely not for the American people. That's for sure. They're for their own agenda, which obviously, as we can see in the past 50 years, has been warmongering, to control this country in this direction and to control the Middle East in that direction. and let the conflict of the Israelis and the Palestinians continue and escalate if they want it to. I mean, come on, it's crazy, but they're probably a part of the major problem in the first place, and President Trump knows that. So at this point, there's not too much more on the conflict on the border at this point that I can find that I believe 100%, or at least close to. But there were agents that were struck and injured in that conflict on the border. So, as I said yesterday, it's not like we're just going to let them do what they do and not defend ourselves, right? Robin L., thanks for coming to the chat. You agree, no NATO or United Nations, of course. Angie says that President Trump has been talking about all of this almost every single time he speaks. He gives us a little bit more of information. And remember, when he met the United Nations, he told them we're out. I think it was out financially, at least what the amount of financial assistance. What is it the United States gives? What was it, 75 or 80% of the United Nations funding? So definitely, hopefully he takes it down. Now, knowing President Trump and for as long as we've known him in office, he's not going to tell you everything. You've got to keep some things secret, like he said before. You don't want to tell your enemy what you're going to do or how you're going to do it. So, but he has made a stand for the American people, and I appreciate him for that. So it's definitely going to change for everyone, including those who are trying to invade our country. And just a little bit of news from the Pelosi political power issue. And, when Nancy Pelosi goes on every day on C-SPAN, she's getting free publicity, ladies and gentlemen, for the Democratic Party, because that's who she represents. And when they consistently downplay President Trump, oh, he's doing this and oh, he's doing that, and it's so horrible. Again, we should do our best to shun that kind of stuff, because she's just getting free publicity. That's all it's ever been. That's why she goes out every day, because she's a basic spokesman right now, and she thinks she's in power, but obviously they're wanting her to leave, or at least some of those. But despite the drama, Democrats will likely vote to tap Pelosi again as their choice for speaker. It makes no sense to me. It's just nothing but nonsense whenever you leave someone in for that long who has done basically nothing but tearing this country apart. Obamacare, and now it's some type of health coverage care, or whatever they want to call it. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to refresh, to get fresh faces in there, and people who aren't so intoxicated at some point. If you've seen some of her videos, as of now, is challenging Pelosi for the slot. Is it worth it? And some Democrats who have vowed to oppose her have since softened their position, because they're being threatened by their own party to say, shut up and let us do our job, or whatever their agenda obviously is, which is obviously attacking President Trump. So any more thoughts on that, ladies and gentlemen? I don't want to keep you here too long. I just wanted to bring you up to date on a couple of things that I saw today that I thought were worth anything. Paradox says the Socialist Workers' Party, or communists, have taken over the Democratic Party. Well, of course, they've been infiltrated for decades, probably before John F. Kennedy, of course. And it's funny how the shift continues from state to state, in governors, in red states turning to blue states, and vice versa. President Trump showed us that in the election in 2016, that a state like Michigan could vote him into the presidency. So, you know, it is a scary time. And yes, President Trump is scary smart. He's not a billionaire for no reason. So definitely I agree with that. Rook Zig, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Rook. Will House sit free D.C. area A.O. Cortez? Isn't she a darling? She doesn't seem to like she knows very much, but they elected her into the House anyway. She's getting her paycheck every month eventually once January 2019 starts. And it's more than most of us, ladies and gentlemen, get paid a year, obviously. And she knows pretty much nothing, but she's a figurehead for the new blood, if you will. And yes, Angie, bless her heart, of course, even though she knows practically nothing. And she still got elected. This is how smart some of those voters are in New York, aren't they? They're just extremely witty and extremely intelligent, aren't they?